The Four Noble Truths. The essence of Buddha's teaching is contained in the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths are an alternative plan for dealing with the pain that humanity experiences, whether it is physical or mental. So the first noble truth is the truth of suffering. The first truth identifies the presence of suffering. Suffering comes in many forms, and the three obvious kinds, according to Buddha, is the age, sickness, and death. However, the Buddha believes that the problem of suffering is much more complex and that suffering is the condition of all existence. We feel unfulfilled and unsatisfied even when we are not suffering from the external factors such as illness or sorrow. This is the reality of pain. The second noble truth, on the other hand, it seeks to determine the cause of suffering. The Buddha taught that desire is the source of all suffering. By desire, Buddhists refer to craving pleasure, material possessions, and immortality, all of which are unsatisfiable desires, and as a result, desiring them can only bring suffering. The third noble truth is the truth of the end of suffering. It has a dual meaning, suggesting either the end of suffering in this life, on earth, or in the spiritual life through achieving nirvana. When one has achieved nirvana, which is a transcendent state free from suffering and our worldly cycle of birth and rebirth, spiritual enlightenment has been reached. The fourth noble truth charts the method for attaining the end of suffering, known to Buddhists as the Noble Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is the fourth of the Four Noble Truths, which is the path that leads to the end of suffering. Buddha taught that the way to achieve enlightenment and to minimize human suffering was to live an ethical life. Buddha placed all human behavior into one of 8 categories or paths. Each paths are designated by the term right, meaning ethical or moral. He then describes the types of behavior that were right for each of these categories. The Eightfold Path has 3 main groups: 2 paths of wisdom, 3 paths of right ethical conduct, and 3 paths of right mental training. The 2 paths of wisdom are right understanding and right intention. For the right understanding, it is sometimes known as right views, and it refers to perceiving things as they are, and that is, objectively and thoroughly and full comprehending them. This necessitates careful observation followed by study. In other words, we must think about what we have observed. Only then we can have right understanding. Right purpose is sometimes called right thought. It involves avoiding viewing things through the lens of negative emotions. We must free ourselves of desire, greed, hatred, and anger, and other negative emotions that can shadow our judgment. Only then would be able to have right thought, and it is a commitment to acquire the right attitudes. So for the 3 paths of ethical conduct are right speech, right action, and right livelihood. For the right speech, it implies that we must have respect for the truth, we must speak the truth, we must avoid slander, we must not gossip, and we must not criticize others. We must avoid using harsh or unkind phrases that cause damaged feelings or arguments. It involves speaking with respect for others and considering the consequences of our words. For the right livelihood, it is an extension of right action, but the focus is on how we earn our living. We should avoid works that require us to kill or deal in slaves, weapons, poisons, and alcoholic beverages. For instance, employees should be treated decently and paid a living wage. And when it comes to managing employees, customers, employers, and competitors, we should be honest and ethical. And lastly, The three paths of right mental training are the right effort, right mindfulness, and right meditation. For the right effort, it means keeping a positive attitude and approaching tasks with passion and drive. We must avoid getting overly focused on our task while simultaneously avoiding laziness. It also entails avoiding negative ideas. It is right action for the mind. And for the right mindfulness, it refers to being aware of one's body, sensations, sentiments, and mental state. We should try to prevent becoming distracted or confused. It is being able to concentrate on the subject at hand with a peaceful mind, free of distractions or worry. It is not meditation, but it does require us to be mindful of our bodily and mental activities. It entails being conscious of our actions, feelings, and thoughts. And for the last is the right meditation. It is the act of meditating, and this creates inner peace while simultaneously sharpening consciousness. It's difficult to get it perfect, and it takes a lot of practice. To achieve ultimate quiet of mind and body, it is necessary to empty the mind, and meditation can be beneficial to individuals. It relieves tension and can even aid in the treatment of depression and addiction. To sum it up, the Eightfold Path is the path to overcoming desire. The Eightfold Path is divided into 8 steps that can be achieved in daily life. These are the right view, right purpose, right speech, right conduct, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and lastly, right meditation are the steps involved. In the eyes of Buddha, a person who uses and abides by these rites should be able to end suffering and live a happy life. Buddhism is an atheistic religion founded in Buddha's teachings, and Buddha's teachings are relevant to your life today regardless of your faith or even if you do not follow any religion. As Buddhists, we may apply this in our daily lives in today's world. Its ideas are being used in mental and physical health treatments as well as political and environmental reforms. Even though Buddha never imagined his teachings would spread so far and establish a religion, they have become an important element of the world. Throughout the decades, his therapeutic approaches aided millions of individuals. Understanding the Four Noble Truths and following the Eightfold Path can help a person attain freedom from craving and attachment to the things of this world, as well as from never-ending cycle of rebirth and death. Furthermore, for the importance of the Eightfold Path, it can educate us how to live in a right manner. It reminds us, for example, to be mindful and honest and polite in our interactions with others. If we want to follow the Eightfold Path, the most important thing to remember is to be ethical in our words, deeds, and thoughts. Be a good, kind, upbeat, and moral individual. We should also remove negativity from our life and bring clarity to all our efforts. So that's all. Thank you.
Buddhist morality is codified in the form of 10 precepts. Number 1, I undertake the precept to refrain from destroying living creatures. 2, I undertake precept to refrain from taking that which is not given. 3, I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual activity. 4, I undertake the precept to refrain from incorrect speech. 5, I undertake the precept to refrain from intoxicating drinks and drugs which lead to carelessness. 6. I undertake the precept to refrain from eating at the forbidden time. 7. I undertake the precept to refrain from dancing, singing, music, going to see entertainment. 8. I undertake precept to refrain from wearing garlands, using perfumes, and beautifying the body with cosmetics. 9. I undertake precept to refrain from lying on high or luxurious sleeping place. The last one is 10. I undertake the precept to refrain from accepting gold and silver and money.
In Buddhism, what does this mean? Buddhism knows no being but only becoming, thus no immoral soul. A soul is a permanent, immaterial entity that exists independently of the body and may persist indefinitely, according to most religions. The soul is mainly associated with consciousness for Christians and Muslims, and it survives death. Buddhists, on the other hand, believe that the self or soul is only the illusion created by the impermanence of the intellect, perceptions, experience, and ego. The self is fleeting and cannot be considered an enduring entity because the mind, perception, emotions, and consciousness are always changing. Death in Buddhism is not the end of existence, but rather the gateway through which you must cross to begin your next reincarnation. This type of reincarnation, often known as rebirth, does not entail the transfer of an unchanging self or soul from one body to another. Rather, the Buddha contrasted death and rebirth to the lighting of successive candles, each time using the previous candle's flame. These rebirths are determined by your karma or moral or immoral deeds.
Good day, I'm Aubrey de Cusin and I will discuss to you about the asceticism. Asceticism is a way of life in which individuals submit his or her impulses, feelings, and desire to a systematic matter of living in order to achieve what he thinks to be in his own nature and which he feels called. Asceticism is also defined as a voluntary self-discipline with the purpose of achieving a higher state of being. Buddhism has an interesting, if tumultuous, relationship with asceticism. It is a movement that prioritizes moderation as one of the tradition's fundamental doctrines. The concept of asceticism is to prepare the way for its first and the most widespread implementation within a religion context, and it may be found in all religions of salvation based on the constant practice of virtues which are pleasing God. Tangas are the most significant form of asceticism performed by the early Buddhist society. The Tangas are meant to eliminate the defilements in the mind and thus to deepen the Buddhist practices. Their aim is to help the practitioner to develop detachment with material things including the body. So the Tanga also practice is not considered as a necessary requirement for a monk as is sila or virtue. Nirvana was aspired by all Buddhists, which is a cessation of desire and thus the end of suffering. In Sanskrit, nirvana refers to the blowing out, which means it is extinguishing of the flame of personal desire or as well as quenching of fire of life. Nirvana is usually viewed as a negative state, a kind of nothingness. However, it is constantly described in positive words in Buddhism, which means the greatest refuge, safety, emancipation, and peace. So, nirvana is a freedom but not from the circumstances. It is a liberation from the ties that bind us to it with the note that whatever comes, I accept as best. So, in addition, the highest goal of Theravada tradition is nirvana or liberation from rebirth cycles. So, Buddha and those who achieve nirvana do not experience rebirth. However, it is to remain in the world for a period of time as a guide to nirvana. So, when you achieve a nirvana, you will stop acquiring bad karma because you transcended to it. You will spend the rest of your life and sometimes future lives working off the bad karma.
Good day everyone, I'm John Cedric D. and I will discuss to you about karma. Karma is a Sanskrit word that basically translates as action or doing. In the Buddhist tradition, karma defined as international action that has long-term consequence. The kind of rebirth in samsara, the cycle of rebirth, is true to be determined by those intentions. Karma pala or fruit of action leads to the future consequence, which means any action can have variety of consequence. But karmic consequences are only those that are a result of both the moral quality of the action and intention behind it. Good moral action leads to the wholesome rebirths, and bad moral action leads to unwholesome rebirths. Karma is also not as the same of fate. Karmic outcomes are the consequence of a natural process, not a judgment imposed by a god or other powerful being. Certain life events are the outcome of previous choice, but our response to those events are not predictable. Even if they produce consequence in the future, unjust action may result in unpleasant conditions, making it easier to commit additional unjust behavior. But the freedom to refrain from doing so remains.
Bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas are enlightened beings who have put off entering paradise in order to help others attain enlightenment. There are many different bodhisattvas, but the most famous in China is Avalokitesvara, known in Chinese as Guan Yin. Bodhisattvas are usually depicted as less austere in outward than the Buddha. Who is called bodhisattvas? In Mahayana Buddhism, a bodhisattva refers to anyone who has generated bodhicitta, a spontaneous wish, a compassionate mind to attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient. The difference between Buddha and Bodhisattva: a Buddha is a truth of awake being, a realized being who knows the truth of reality, while the Bodhisattva is an individual striving to achieve the state of Buddha and to reboot or Buddha. The role of Bodhisattva: Bodhisattvas are enlightened beings who postpone their own salvation in order to help all sentient beings. The Bodhisattvas in ideal type, not a depiction of an historical person like the Buddha. Bodhisattva have some of the characteristics of Christian saints. There are compassionate figures who help worshippers. To identify Bodhisattva, Bodhisattva may be distinguished from the Buddha by the presence of the crown and elaborate jewelry. They may share some feature with the Buddha such as elongated earlobes, an urna, and a halo. Bodhisattva may be found flanking the Buddha in iconic compositions as a multi-figure altarpiece or in isolation.
For the last segment, what does Buddha mean by this quote? What ought to be done is neglected. What ought not to be done is done. The desires of unruly, thoughtless people are always increasing. It means that what ought to be done is to train and discipline your mind so that you can examine and notice what is going on inside of you, which will lead to wisdom, compassion, and a shift in how you react and interact to everything. Few people do it. Instead, we seek external rewards. Because we are dissatisfied on the inside, our efforts are not focused on facing our dissatisfaction and figuring out what we are doing to cause it. Instead, we seek distractions in the form of love, pleasure, money, celebrity, power, food, music, thrills, and other things that do not cure our discontent but help us forget about it. And that concludes our discussion of Buddhism. We hope you have gained some insight from us. Thank you for listening and have a great day.